This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library.
Enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for.
Okay, on Friday night and Saturday night, I had the opportunity to, go and play guitar for a living. So I was playing the same venue each night, actually, just different. Well, not even really different sides of the stage. So on Friday night, it was this student darts evening thing. Both times the stages were a little bit cramped. On the second time, basically half of the stage was being shared with a brass band who played with drums and stuff. So it was a bit of a different sort of setup to sometimes usual, where like essentially I was like right next to the drum kit, kind of on top of it. On night one, Joel was playing drums, amazing player. On night two, Pete Chart was playing drums, also really great player. Yeah, so you get like a bit of a different flavour each night. Now, I wanted to talk in this video about how I found it. So on night two, I was thinking, well, that sounds a little bit funny. I had to turn it up a little bit louder, basically because stage volume was considerably more substantial. On night one, the bass player, Benny, was playing a Sans amp direct, so there was no bass amp on stage.
That sounds good.
Night two, Ryan was using an actual bass rig, and this is one of those things, I guess, that we should kind of consider. Like stage volume and tone and all these things are definitely like what you need in terms of stage volume totally depends on what's happening around you. And this is one of those things that I think tone and volume that are inherently linked. And when people think, you know, you're complaining about your tone, that's why you need more volume. Sometimes I think it might be because you just can't hear yourself well enough. And maybe even like the audience can't hear you well enough either. So I did at one stage take this off for a solo, and at that point, the singer didn't notice that I was taking a solo. So that to me is again kind of indicative of why you might want some stage reinforcement. Because if your singer can't hear that you're taking a solo, and I'm presuming maybe even some people out front wouldn't necessarily have been hearing much either. I think there is a real argument, and this is the thing for me all along that I've found, is that I'm much happier with modelling and digital gear in general if I have some volume behind me so that I don't feel like I'm totally being lost within whatever is happening in the room. So, more generally, my main con with this is that, I felt like it was maybe making some rattly noises. It was because I put stuff in the back of the cab to transport it, and I think some of that was maybe sort of rattling against the cabinet. So if you're going to do that, take it out, obviously, once you've done that. But yes, I had the volume up at about as high as sort of 1, 2 o'clock, so really kind of pushing things quite a bit. Too loud, ideally, but for most situations. But that was a situation where there was on-stage monitors and there wasn't really any guitar in the monitors because I had this. So it was kind of a little bit of a different one to usual in that regard, because normally I'd be playing in a situation where it'd be in-ears or just amps, I guess. How I was using it, I was just plugged straight of an output of the FM9 into the input of here. I had the EQ on, but I was not using the speaker part of it, which I think is my preferred way of running this. I found I would leave cabs on my modeler most of the times to go through any FRFR thing, and although this isn't technically an FRFR, it's a powered cab, and I find it works quite well to just leave your cabs on, which may not be what you prefer, and it may not be what these things are necessarily designed to do, but I find that once you then put things up at a higher volume, you don't get too much spiky stuff, because the cab is sort of filtering some of those bits out. Which is, to me, that one of the things with digital modelling is that stuff is kind of there, right? Any negatives that I found? So, like I say, I felt like partway through the first set of the second day, oh, is this rattling? Have I kind of cooked the speaker? But I think I just had, some things in the back of the cab that were rattling around. So it worked as soon as I'd taken that out. I didn't have any faults with it all day. It is definitely loud enough, and to me, sounds as good as any of the FRFR solutions that I've tried. Now, here's a little clip just comparing the sound of this versus two other cabs. I'm going to do a longer video on this, but ToneX Cab, which is like £679, Barefaced Reality, which is like £1249. So both the ToneX and the Barefaced have a tweeter in there. The ToneX is a little bit different because it's closed back. So this is kind of like a blend of the two, where the Barefaced Reality is a sort of totally different design, to be fair, like open back and stuff ported. This is just an open back 1x12, but without a tweeter. So you get a sense for how these things might sound relative to one another. Of course, life is not an A/B test, so I think once you're actually on stage with these things, it's more about, does it give you enough volume? And I would say that definitely yes. But of those three clips anyway, to me, this actually sounds a little bit closer to what I think sounds more balanced and natural. To me, the ToneX sounds, in comparison, like a little bit more closed and a bit bloaty in the low end. And the Barefaced, to me, is a lot more open in the top end, a lot more clear, a lot brighter, and this is kind of the sweet spot for me in between the two. Now, one thing that would have been nice, would it be a little bit lighter, having carried it from the venue to the car park twice. That was a pretty long walk and quite difficult. So it weighs 14.5 kilos. I think the ToneX Cab is just around 12.7 or something like that. You can get lighter FRFR stuff, is I guess what I would say. I think it's MDF. I think one way that could be made lighter, I guess, would be to use solid pine, but that would obviously run up the cost. So yeah, in general, definitely I prefer this to the original Powercab, which to me was like a little bit over engineered for what I want. I want it to be more like an actual guitar cab, which this essentially is, right? But also, the way that I was running it was with the tweeter off. So like, do I need a tweeter in there? Do I need speaker models? To me, it is definitely really useful having an EQ on the top of the cab, because it's just like, right, well, is this cutting through enough? Maybe I need to up the mids a bit. Maybe the treble could come down a bit, or maybe, I don't know, if you're finding in a certain space, actually this room is really, really boomy. I do think having the EQ on top of the thing is a definite fail-safe to just help you actually sound the way that you want to on stage without creating problems. I think that's what the EQ really is, like a bit of a problem solver. So yes, loud enough. Yes, I think it sounds good relative to other FRFR speakers. It doesn't have the same kind of problematic sort of tweeter thing for me, where I don't really like the sort of response and tone of a tweeter. Once you start to turn it up, it starts to, for me, get a little bit brittle. Doesn't have that kind of stays a bit smoother. Does it sound like you've added an amp onto your stage? Basically, yes. So all round good. The build quality to me seems better than a Catalyst, and that is the one area for me that was a bit of a weakness of the old Powercab, was that this handle, it came slightly undone. I don't know why that was, but yeah, overall I'm quite impressed. £425 is the price of the obvious competitor, and I'll do a video on this at some point, will be the Fender FR12, which doesn't have the speaker part built in, but does have a tweeter, is closed back, and has some of the similar sort of features. The ToneX Cab can load IR, so I guess that's kind of comparable too. One thing I do really miss about the Fender and the ToneX Cab though is those kickback arms, which I think are a bit of a game changer when it comes to having more band-friendly volumes. I do think that is a big plus of the Fender FR12 and ToneX Cab. Let me know your thoughts. Have you tried the Line 6 Powercab CL? I did another video on why this kind of thing exists. It's kind of that spot between a real cab and, well, it is a real cab, but it's a powered cab, right? And with some additional sort of augmentation, but not a traditional FRFR cab, which would have a tweeter and would be designed to sound kind of flat as possible. This is more to kind of support you on stage and be something a bit more like a real amp would be if you were to plug into a real amp on stage as well, which is also totally a valid thing that you could try doing. I tried it recently with a deluxe reverb, but if you're looking for, you know, some thoughts on the Line 6 Powercab CL, that is what this was. Cheers for stopping by, and thanks to Line 6 for sending me this to check out. It's definitely another great option, I think, within this sort of space.
Let's